Today we're going to do a little more on the camera overhead light mount that I'm building for my little workstation. Going to get the bases, the PVC bases made, and the vertical uprights on the side of it. That's about all I have time for today. So if you're interested in stuff like this, making an economy setup, all this stuff can be purchased if you have a lot of money and you want to spend a lot of money. It's all there to be had. If you want to build it, stick around and I'll show you what I'm going to do. To get this project kicked off, we're going to need PVC in whatever size you decide. If you've never worked with PVC before, it's a really easy plastic to mold, but you have to warm it up some. Now, this was very easy to do. I can't tell you the melting temperature of all PVC because different mixtures are a little different. And what I did, I put this in the oven at 200 degrees. Use a toaster oven, whatever you want. It's not going to cause a problem unless you get it too hot. If you get it too hot, it's going to smoke. You don't want that. If you smell it, it's too hot. So I put it in the oven at 200 degrees for 10 minutes, and it was still, you could kind of flex it a little bit, but not much. So put it back in at 300 degrees for 10 minutes, and it was just right. It has almost like a rubber texture to it. So what we're going to do is we're going to melt or warm up, soften these T's, and I'm going to make the bottom flat like this. I kind of want this piece to be vertical, so you need to get this as flat as possible. It doesn't have to be perfect. I made a little jig, okay? You don't have to have anything like this. The way I did this one, I just stuck one of these pieces of metal through it and then stood on the two outside edges, and it came out perfect, but we need the vertical to be vertical. So placement is a big part of this. If you want to just give it a shot and see if you can do it in one go, then fine. I decided to make a jig because I want to get it fairly close. To make this jig, really doesn't matter how far this is from the outside edges. I made it about this far, which means I didn't really measure it. These are 3 inches apart, and I just went to basically the center and went 1.5 inches. Either way gave me enough to bolt it down with. All this was done with hand tools. I cut these 2 pieces of aluminum using a hacksaw. I'm an old guy with trifocals, and I mean, they're not perfect, but they don't need to be. They're close enough for what we're going to do. Same thing with the holes. I just marked out a center, and I marked it at 3 inches on one of these plates, drilled a hole, put the 2 of them together, drilled 1 hole through them, bolted it together, and then drilled the other hole, and that way all the holes lined up. Then I took same thing on here, drill 1 hole on the top, run a bolt through it to hold it in place, use this as your template to drill your second hole. Works out really well. Made these with a little bit of a slot. That way, if I didn't have it exactly straight, I could wiggle it until I got it where I wanted it. And as you can see, both of them are the same. When you warm this up, it's going to warm up the whole piece. Now, you could try using a heat gun and just warming up to one side. It's kind of hard to get it uniformly warmed up. The thing that you're going to have to note is that when you squeeze this down, it's going to elongate this hole on top. So I cut a short piece of PVC to deal with that. This doesn't go in the oven. This needs to stay rigid. So as soon as this comes out of the oven, the first thing you're going to do is stick this on here. Then you're going to clamp these down, or whatever your bending method is. Put a long stick through there, stand on it. However you want to do it. There is no wrong way. Whatever works for you. I did all this with hand tools to show that it could be done with hand tools. Speaking of hand tools, if you don't work with PVC a lot, but you think you might want to start, this is a dandy tool to have. This is a PVC cutter. You put this in here, and it's just a ratchet mechanism on here, and it cuts through the PVC. This one, the max OD is 2 3/8, so this is the biggest PVC that I can cut with this. And it's you got to put a little squeeze into it, but it works. Anything smaller than this, man, and this is 1.5 ID. Anything smaller than this, man, it's just like using a pair of kitchen scissors. Really nice cut on this thing. I'm actually going to use a toaster oven because I'm just going to do these one at a time because I didn't want to build 4 of these plates. So I'm going to go throw this in the oven, squeeze these together. I'll be right back. All right, funny enough, this first one worked, and that's basically what it's going to look like when you're done. I'm going to pull this off. We'll take a look and make sure it retains its shape. This actually worked. So there we go. Now, you know, it's not perfect, but again, it's close enough for what I'm trying to do. Tip number whatever. When I drill these together, I put a little index mark so that they go back together the same way each time. It is time to start on the next one. So let me get all this bolted together. When I'm done with all that, I'm not going to show it to you because it's going to be the same as this one. I'll be back. This is what the PVC is going to bolt to. So I use the metal plates as a template to properly drill these holes. Again, I'm using hand tools to do all of this. So the more jigs you can make, the more templates, whatever you like to call them, you can make, the more accurate your results are going to be. I countersunk these holes so I can use this type of screw so this will mount flush against the desk. It'll make more sense when I get it assembled. So when it's assembled, I'll be right back. I have these finished. I think they turned out pretty decent. I'm going to attach this to the table with one of these little clamps, one at each end. This is a temporary setup until I can do something else. I'm just trying to show you that it can be economical. If you just want to use one clamp, you could actually drill a hole right here, put the clamp in the middle, and I think it would be okay. I have 4 of these, so I'm going to use 4 of them. If you want to take all of the ink marks off of your PVC, acetone does that. Be sure and do this outside. A lot of ventilation.
This stuff is nasty.
And use gloves. I'm using Inviso gloves. Started to do this backwards in the monitor. But you can see it's taking everything off. So there you go. Everything's gone. While I still have my respirator and Inviso gloves on, I'm going to go clean the rest of this up. I was actually kidding on that part. I did clean these up, used acetone. This isn't the only way you can do it. I'll show you what I got here. These are going to be my 2 uprights. And this one I haven't cleaned yet. This one I cleaned. And on this one, I didn't use acetone at all. I used a Scotch-Brite pad and dish soap. Takes a little more elbow grease, but it works. If you don't have acetone, here you go. If you don't want to use acetone, there you go. I will also say, if you plan to paint this, there is a plastic paint on the market. You're probably going to want to scrub this up. So either a Scotch-Brite pad or some maybe 220 grit sandpaper to get the shine off of this before you paint it will make the paint stick longer. Not to muddy the water, I did this last one more option. This is wet or dry sandpaper. This is a 400 grit. You actually use it with water. Put a little soap in a bucket. You can sand this down. The nice thing about this, if you don't want to paint this, you can leave it like this. It takes some of the gloss off of it, if that matters. If you're going to paint it, this is what you want to do before you paint it. Be sure that you rinse it well, get all the soap off of it, and be sure that it's dry before you hit it with paint. Listen, that's all I have time for today. Next week, or whenever I can get to it again, I'll start on those verticals. I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. I'm going to make several mounting locations, and all the wiring is going to run through those out the bottom, so it's not quite as visible, and I'll show you how I'm going to prep all of that stuff. Appreciate anybody that's still here. I'm going to throw a couple other videos up over here. Check those out, and if you want to see the rest of this project, subscribe, and I'll catch you down the road.